Okay, let's move things along and mix things up a little bit now with a panel on how you create an environment where innovation and tech can flourish. Although tech obviously has a very important role to play in the decarbonisation story, we've got a fantastic lineup of speakers representing the main transport modes, and they're going to look at what major transport infrastructure owner-operators look for in tech, and also the opportunity to share innovation across transport modes. So, I know our speakers are here, so please welcome Nick Woods, Group Chief Information Officer for Manchester Airports Group. We have Marie Hill, who is Chief Transformation and Digitalisation Officer at DB Cargo. We also have Ashley Feldman, who's Programme Manager for Transport and Smart Cities. Is Ashley with us today? Can't see. Ashley, there you are. He's making his way down right now. And also Paul Campion, CEO at TRL, is very kindly stepping in for Davin Crowley Street, who unfortunately can't make it due to illness. So let's please welcome our panel.
My name is Ashley Feldman, and I'm the Programme Manager for Transport and Smart Cities at Tech UK. Tech UK is the UK's technology trade association. We represent 1,000 tech companies in the UK very proudly, and our role is to champion technology and to showcase the positive contribution that tech can make to our economy, to our environment, and to our society. And I thought I'd just start with some brief reflections, if I may, in this introduction on why Tech UK looks at transport. It's a question that I get quite frequently. Why do we have somebody looking at the transport sector? We're a tech body. And there's really three core reasons. The first is that technology and transport are converging at a remarkable rate. You really can't have conversations now about integration, multimodal transport, without also referencing the underpinning digital infrastructure that's going to bring that all together. So we really see technology and transport becoming increasingly linked, and that's why we have a transport programme, and that's why we're a supporter of interchange. So that's the first reason. The second is we also see transport innovation as a really critical part of the UK's ambitions to become a science and tech superpower by 2030. So that's something that there's been a lot of talk about recently with the Prime Minister and Chancellor saying that that is their ambition. We see transport innovation as a core part of that, and we want to support that and tell that story within this wider political narrative at the moment. And the final reason is that we see a number of barriers to adoption for tech companies participating within the transport marketplace. And our role as a trade association is to really help unlock some of those barriers. So that might be in policy and regulation and ensuring we have the right regulatory frameworks in place. There might also be in commercial arrangements in procurement and contracting, or it might also be in helping our public sector contacts and stakeholders to really build an understanding of what technology can do for them, what use cases are available to them, and how they can apply that to digitize and transform the way that they deliver services. So that all said, that's, I guess, how tech underpins my work, and it's a really exciting time to be in this space, and happy to be on the stage today.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you so much. Would you like to carry on, seeing that you have the mic? Thank you very much, Paul.
Thank you. Morning, everybody. I'm Paul Campion. I'm CEO of TRL. TRL is a social purpose enterprise. We're trying to make transport better. We're actually 90 years old, and one of the pieces of technology we're particularly proud of is the zebra crossing, which I mention as perhaps something you don't intuitively think of as technology. Very much nowadays, we're perhaps more the Silicon Valley definition of technology as a software, consultancy and services organisation. Fingers in very many pies, perhaps particular focus on safety and asset management. A couple of things that I would mention as a supplier to National Highways. Davin, obviously, who I'm standing in for, is the Chief Data Officer of National Highways. Well, we're supplying National Highways with a new asset management platform, the pavement asset management system, very much the heart of their operations from a systems perspective. But actually, as an operator in perhaps now small own right, we own and run the Smart Mobility Living Lab in London, which is 24 kilometres of instrumented public road. And that whole facility was designed digitally, and we have a digital twin now, which people are using as a simulation environment and then as a matched physical test environment to validate tests done in cyberspace as essentially a functional digital twin. And I personally have spent some time working with the leadership of the National Digital Twin Programme, now hosted by the Connected Places Catapult. So I think this whole thought of the future of assets, the future of infrastructure, being a cyber physical twin is very central to the way we think about the work, and I think probably a topic we might come back to in this discussion.
Absolutely, thank you. And speaking of that, don't forget #interchange. Whilst our panel setting out their what they do, please feel free to get some questions in as they arise. Can we move on to you now, Marie?
Sure.
Actually, if you'd be kind enough to pass that mic.
Well,
Are you mic'd up? Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, I think I'm good.
Brilliant, thank you.
So hello everybody, my name's Marie Hill. If you do look for me later on LinkedIn, I'm Marie Banks. I'm changing names at the moment. I'm Chief Transformation and Digital Officer at DB Cargo UK. For those of you that don't know what we do, we run rail logistics transports across the UK and into Europe. I've done this role for about 3 years. Before that I was head of IT. I have responsibility for all of our technology requirements, so whether it's hardware, software, telecoms, governance, cyber. I also have responsibility for all of our digital programs, which is where we're trying to change how we do business using digital technologies. And I also have responsibility for all of our business transformation programs, and that might be anything from moving to ETCS, the digital signalling that's happening across the UK rail infrastructure, to fundamental transformation programs about how we do business. We have really 3 core themes that my role revolves around, and really where technology plays its part. The first is our customer experience, so what it's like to be a customer of DB and how we really change that to become a much more digitally focused organisation. Our employee experience, so how we make a better working environment for our people. And the final thing that we do with technology and how that's helping support our working organisation is in intelligent planning production. So basically the product that we sell and how technology underpins that, whether it's the orders that we're taking through to the resources that we've got and how we optimise them, or the infrastructure that we run and our asset management programmes.
Terrific, thank you so much. And finally, last but not least, thank you, Nick.
Thank you. So, hi, good morning, everyone. So, Nick Woods, I am the Chief Information Officer for Manchester Airport Group. We own and operate Manchester, Stansted and East Midlands airports in the UK, and do a bunch of other stuff as well. And it sounds like Marie and I have the same job, which is really interesting because I think you are increasingly seeing a shift from people that have been technology leaders to people that are now driving strategic change inside of their organisations that have come from a technology background. So yeah, I'm responsible for everything from a technology perspective, from our data centres, our infrastructure, our cybersecurity, our digital platforms, websites, soup to nuts. But for the last 12 months, I've also extended my role to take on a responsibility for group-wide transformation, similarly focused on customer experience and revenue, our airports technologies and systems, and how do we make those things work much more efficiently and provide a much more frictionless experience for our passengers and for our airlines, for our smart buildings and infrastructure and our route to net zero. We've got a target within the group of being net zero by 2038, but Sustainable Aviation yesterday announcing that a really clear roadmap and plan for how you get the whole UK aviation industry decarbonised by 2050. So there's a big theme of that we're playing on. And then the back office, so actually how do we make our business more efficient end to end to better provide services both for our employee experience and for our customers outside of that. So fairly big remit these days.
That is a big remit. Thank you so much. And also thank you for your questions coming in at #interchange. Let's kick off with one here. To all of you, in fact, what is the upcoming tech opportunity that you're most excited about for your business or sector? Who'd like to start?
Yeah,
Go ahead. Thank you.
Look, my background, I'm not a transport person, man and boy. I came to transport through a technology and innovation perspective, but the reason I'm in transport is it feels to me the central sector to create the sort of society we want to live in. We've got a non-negotiable deadline to decarbonise here, and we're going to have to find ways to live our lives and have flourishing lives that have a different impact on the planet. And I mean, you know this, but it's very easy as a transport community to get internally focused on our jargon and on our particular problems. But 10 to 15% of everything we wear, everything we consume, is embedded to transport. Our ability to live our lives, take our kids to school, go to the pub, get to work, whatever it is we do in our lives is mediated by transport. And transport, of course, is the single biggest carbon-emitting segment. So we've got this extraordinarily strong driver. The good news is we have enablers as well. And there's a broad range of technology. The one I'm most excited about is information technology. That's my background. But I think it is potentially the most transformative, and in some ways is an enabler for all the other technologies that we're going to need. So the previous session we heard about new fuels, new powertrains. They're going to reduce the emission at source of things. But we pretty much the whole of that presentation was about how thoughtful we have to be about using these technologies. None of these technologies does anything by themselves. They have to be deployed into different processes, different systems. And I'd be very interested to hear your experiences, but to me, the critical dependency here is leadership. We've actually got tons of technology sitting on the shelf we're not using as an industry. And transport, particularly infrastructure, can be extremely conservative. By the way, for good reasons. Once you find out how to build a bridge that doesn't fall down, stick to that. But we are going to have to change the way we do things, and we're going to have to learn as an industry how to adopt this technology at radically different speeds. So I'm excited, but also challenged and engaged by that problem, where it's not, what's the latest gizmo? We've got gizmos coming out of our ears. How do we exploit this stuff? How do we adopt it? And how do we move as a sector at pace?
Thank you. Ashley, you're nodding enthusiastically.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of that resonates, Paul. And I think just to build on that, there is, there are a lot of technologies coming online. There's a great deal of innovation in the UK. We have a fantastic research and science base here. But I think where the UK still has a lot of work to do is actually taking that innovation and taking it to market and finding those commercial models and helping scale up that innovation and deploying here in the UK. We have IP which is coming online here, which at the moment, as things stand, there are not supportive frameworks to see that commercialize. And I think in the current climate, the focus is around how we can build the UK's growth, build our productivity, and build our global competitiveness. We need to focus a lot on actually, can we scale innovation in the UK? Do we have the right measures in place to adopt at the pace that is needed? And again, this is where I think people like Nick and Marie have a really core role to play as the ones who are actually deploying and implementing this technology within their businesses and within their operations. But I think that should be a really core focus for the tech sector at the moment, is looking at how we get to that next level beyond just research and actually into commercialization.
Ashley, thank you. Marie, your thoughts?
So if I pick two, if that's okay, Nicola. The first I'm going to touch on, and to touch on Paul's point, I think we lag behind a lot of other industries. So I'm not going to talk about the exciting ones. I will pick one at the end, just because I have to. That's my job. But the first one that's absolutely transforming the way that we do business is business intelligence and data. We had a lot of information in our business, but we didn't use it to drive decision making. It's been a journey that we've been on for about 18 months now, but bringing that data, yes, to our senior leadership team to help them manage our business better and make critical decisions at the right point, at the right time, with the right information, and not on gut instinct, as one of my key senior leaders told me. That's how they make decisions. But actually to our users. So if you're an engineer in one of our depots and you're working on a locomotive, what difference does the task that you're making do, and how does that add value in our business? And there's nothing greater than seeing your contribution to the whole as an employee. So that for me has been a fundamental game-changing technology in where we are now, and actually underpinning that. And I know most of you think that's so basic, but it really is having such a powerful change on the behaviours in our business. The second one, and I'm not a techie before I say this, there's nothing more exciting for me than seeing all my techies get excited about something. And there's been a lot of buzz in our office around AI and how they can use that and what difference that makes. And it's the really simple things that it's going to help them do, which is, I think, for me, really exciting, and how we bring that to life in our business. So they're the two that I'd probably focus on.
Thank you very much. Nick, coming to you.
So I'd agree with what all my fellow panelists have said, really. I think the industry transport industry generally is a bit behind where other industries are. I've spent a long time in telecoms, spent a long time in financial services, and I was pretty shocked, I think, coming into aviation and seeing just quite how behind we are. And I've been there for a while now, and we have invested really significantly in our data platforms, really significantly in bringing systems together, not just within our own group and our own airports, but on a global level, right? And I think this is where, as a transport panel, I think that's where it starts becoming really interesting, particularly in the path to net zero. How do you remove friction from an end-to-end journey for a passenger or for anyone who's wanting to get from point A to point B, where they might be on rail at one point in time, getting onto an aircraft or travelling across the roads? And how do we actually get access to our data? How do we get access to each other's data and start collaborating across that end-to-end ecosystem to really drive efficiency, and both for the vehicles that are travelling and how they are consuming the fuel and being more efficient from that perspective, but for the people that are using those systems as well. So for me, it is all about data. My job is effectively to get people and planes into little boxes in the sky and get them to their destinations as efficiently as possible. It's a big data problem. That's all it is. And when you extend that out across the end-to-end chain, from starting at someone's home or starting in a factory where you've actually just produced something to getting that to its end-to-end destination, being able to map it and track it all the way through those journey points is what's really going to drive the change, I think, in terms of where we need to get to. So then if you've got the data, and it is, we're talking about terabytes of data being produced globally every single day, how do you interrogate that and actually infer intelligence from it? And it has to be through artificial intelligence and through the power of systems that are coming on stream. We're doing a lot at the moment around integrating with the airlines to understand, just simple stuff like turn-up profiles. Contact centres have been doing this stuff for years around how many calls they expect in a 15-minute period and how many staff they need. We have no idea how many people are really booked on a Ryanair flight that's coming out at 10 o'clock. So we're starting to actually use machine learning models to work out typically what does that flight see, how many passengers do we expect to be on it, and therefore how many staff do we need to man our security lanes, and how many lanes do we need open at any given time. So there's loads of innovation happening, but this is a global network, and trying to bring everyone along at the same speed is next to impossible. So you've got to find ways to be able to create innovation within buckets that help us all move forwards while still maintaining the stability of the core environment. So
okay.
It's a challenge.
Thank you, Nick. And I've got to say thank you all for all your questions. We've got a load coming in. So let's hit the next one. For a lot of new tech, regulation can be a blocker or can move very slowly. How would you recommend engaging with regulators to enable innovation?
Yeah. I can come on this one very quickly. Tech UK, kind of a core of what we do is really engaging with regulators, legislators, policymakers about technology and the opportunities that it creates. I mean, with this question, I would say actually it's not so much about engaging on innovation, it's more about engaging on the outcomes that the innovation will bring. I think it's much more important to demonstrate, what is the positive outcome that an AI system or an automated system will generate, and how is that going to actually improve people's quality of life? How is that going to drive positive outcomes for the environment? And how is that going to help grow our economy? And I think if you go with the outcomes first approach, and the technology becomes a way to achieving that outcome, the way the messages will land much more firmly with regulators or with policymakers. And I think this is something which is happening a lot in the self-driving vehicle sector at the moment. We're really trying to build out that messaging about actually how is this technology going to drive improvements in safety and quality of life and in well-being. And that, I think, is the crux in which we need to engage, rather than saying, oh, we need to have the technology because X jurisdiction has it, or because we'll lose pace if we don't. It's more about showing the contribution that it makes. And I think that is a core point when we're thinking about regulation.
I'd agree. Let me amplify that. Just a couple of days ago, the announcement was made about the class of Ford vehicles that will be legal in this country. And TRL, we worked with the European Union, as it was actually, to write the Advanced Driver Assistance Systems regulation. So we've had a deep relationship with regulation in this area, and the Minister announced the underlying legislation which enables that vehicle to be on the roads at Smart Mobility Living Lab a couple of years ago, and that was a very conscious and deliberate decision by the UK government to take a regulatory lead. And part of that is a storytelling thing, isn't it? It's one model from one manufacturer, but the story that the UK is in a leadership position here is a powerful one and not an untruthful one either, I'm pleased to say. I think there's a really deep story, though, which we need to be careful of. Regulation is too often thought about as being something that is stifling business, and one of the tropes that I find most frustrating is this idea of regulation as red tape. The truth is, there is no such thing as an open market. Regulation literally defines the ways in which you can make money. And regulatory certainty is the foundation of any market. And it's interesting because the same politicians who are talking about red tape in a pejorative sense have deliberately chosen to take a regulatory lead to enable certain classes of technology onto the roads. And I would beg for a bit more consistency here. The story here has to be that regulation is going to create the markets that is going to enable people to make money by deploying this stuff. And if we wait to regulate until after we find out what's happened, actually we won't get the best outcome. So there's a symbiosis here, and we need to have agile regulation, and we need to be thinking about regulation in a very different and by a much more positive way.
Thank you. Another question here. What are the changes to the commercial models that enables better data flow? I'd like to take that.
I can take it if you want.
Thank you.
So this is a properly interesting one, I think, from our sector. And I touched on before that we have historically had limited view of what the airlines are actually doing in terms of the data that they've got available to them, and there's been a very protectionist approach to who owns the passenger. Is it an airline? Is it the airport? Is it the travel agency? No one really does. The passenger owns that. It's the passenger's data that really cares about it. And I think what we're starting to see, particularly post the pandemic, where aviation was particularly hard hit, as I'm sure rail was as well. But we are starting to see a lot more openness and a lot more ways that we can provide integration and sharing of data and flows of data across different commercial entities, actually, but do that in a way that doesn't put at risk that privacy model, but allows benefits for everybody. So, if I can understand much more directly from Ryanair what time they're about to, whether they're on track to depart, I can be a lot more efficient around how I'm actually using the airspace. I can be a lot more efficient around at what time we give them permission to go en route to the runway, which means that we're not building up a queue of aircraft that's burning very expensive fuel on there. We're not creating the same adverse effects around pollution that you would normally expect to see, and we find a much better experience for the passengers themselves because they have much more insight to actually what's going to happen with their journey. So we're starting to see the barriers come down that you don't necessarily need to change your commercial models to enable better data flow. You do need to start thinking about smart contracts and technologies that are available to enable you to appropriately share the bits that are relevant and and that they then don't get used for things that shouldn't be out there, or that you've not agreed them to use them for. But I think there is a willingness collectively that actually there is, if you can do this properly, everybody wins. So like I say, I think there's just a lot more openness to doing it.
That's really interesting. We've got a two-parter question, actually, unless anybody wanted to come back on that question at all. No? Yeah, please go ahead.
I sort of reiterate a theme, actually, and Nick, you don't have to agree that this is necessarily the case. There's a perfect example where leadership is critical, because actually we do have the tools and techniques, but there, in this area of the commercialisation of data, there can tend to be an immediate reaction, which is, I know my data is valuable, I just don't know how, and so I'm going to keep it tight. And when someone comes and says, look, I could use your data and we could make money together, actually, I knew it was valuable, now you're definitely not getting it. and actually, the use of data isn't just additive or multiplicative, it's exponentially more valuable when data is correlated with other data. And enabling, therefore, the data to be open and be freely available is critical to solving the sorts of problems we're trying to solve. But that's a leadership problem, because if there isn't a leadership statement, it gets delegated down to, with all due respect to them, the procurement team, the legal team, and so on like that. Their job is to make sure there is no risk. If you take away the risk, there isn't any opportunity either.
Thank you.
I do agree.
Ashley, did you want to add? I don't want to jump to the next question unless you had something you wanted to add.
The only thing I'd add to that is, it's kind of echoing what Paul's just said, but it's also about company culture. So, we need to have a culture, not just within businesses, but across the industry of sharing. And I think what the DFT has recently put out in their data strategy, which is that they want to get to an open by default kind of environment in the transport sector, is absolutely right. But I think that requires cultural change. I think that requires strong leadership. There is definitely a role from government in kind of helping to bring some of that forward in policy, but also in demonstrating why data sharing will add wider benefit to the sector. And I think this will also be kind of a slow and gradual change, but we do see that the benefits, as Paul just outlined, in innovation will be realised very quickly when we do get to that. So hopefully it will accelerate from then on.
Okay, thank you. Another question. What are the changes, the commercial models that enable better data flow? We've not touched on this, have we?
Yeah.
We have done that one? Okay, we need to get rid of that one. Let's have a look. That's the one. Confidence of getting to net zero. If not, do we have the confidence that we will actually get to net zero? If not, how can tech actually help with climate adaptation? Who'd like to take that? Marie?
If I start.
Thank you.
So I definitely have confidence that we'll get there. I think our social culture will drive that. Our customers will demand that the transport that they take, that the products that they buy have sustainable backbones. So I think we will get there. I think it's going to take a lot of collaboration across industry. I think there's some really exciting things we've seen, some of the discussions that that were on just before this panel about the different types of fuel that will be available, and it's really difficult sometimes. So I look at my industry, we have locomotives that are 20 years old, they have an asset lifespan of 40 years, so we can't just get rid of the asset, so I have to find a way to almost retrofit technology to help us become more sustainable. So I think it definitely can happen. I think it happens much easier with collaboration. I think there's a part to play with funding and how that's done, and how the government can support that for our industries, because transport and particularly logistics is low profit, so we don't have significant pockets to go and invest in this. But then we have to learn from those businesses that are doing that and then bring that technology into rail. So.
Thank you. Would you like to pick up on that?
You know what they say, there's 10 types of people in the world, those who understand binary and those who don't. And I'm always interested in the way that these sort of questions become binary. And will we get to net zero or won't we? Right? Well, in the real world, no, we won't. But the closer we approach, the better. And it's not an either or. It's not net zero or adaptation. We've got at least 1.5 degrees locked in. Right? The world is going to be fundamentally different for our grandchildren, fundamentally different in so many ways. So we have to adapt, and we have to mitigate and avoid as much as we possibly can. And the more we allow this to be a binary debate, the less productive and effective we'll be. And essentially, we'll waste time debating instead of getting on doing something.
Yeah, I'd like to come in on that one as well. Like I say, I think yesterday the UK aviation groups and the sustainability in aviation announced a clear roadmap, and there's not. I think we will have to get there actually, naturally from a carbon reduction perspective. But I think the way we get there isn't going to be one thing. It is going to be hydrogen or more electric aircraft. It is going to be they need to do carbon removal from the atmosphere. So it is going to be, and then, like I say, just being more efficient around how we do things in terms of energy consumption, around more natural sources. It's going to take a long time, but there is clear roadmaps there if businesses are prepared to put the plans in and do the thinking now. You know, we can't afford to be short-termist about this. And when you're putting a 5-year business plan together for something that you essentially need to start investing in now to be able to deliver something by 2050, that is a much more complicated piece to do from a commercial aspect, which is where I think, you know, policy and regulation and government start also playing a role in helping get there. We at MAG were founding members of the Jet Zero Council 20 years ago. I think we've been talking about this, and very active in helping to shape what the wider environment and ecosystem needs to do around this. And yeah, like I say, we have to get there ultimately.
Absolutely, yeah. We have a question about silos, something that came up yesterday as well, actually. And we'd like to know, what are your strategies behind cross-industry working with governmental organisations who are known to silo data? How do you stop data silos in the public sector? We'd like to come back on that one. Ashley.
I'll give it a go, yeah.
Go ahead.
I think that's quite a challenging question. We've spoken a lot about silos over the course of this conference. I think for me, one of the first steps about how you remove them is getting your vocabulary right. Tech UK, we work across all the different modes of transportation. We work into a lot of the arms length bodies of the DFT and across wider government as well. What always strikes me is that there is simply a different language for saying precisely the same thing, depending on who you talk to. And for me, that creates, it creates confusion at best, but it also creates, inefficiency and just an inability to actually cooperate in the right way and collaborate. So I think actually, we can talk about how we restructure organisationally and all of that good stuff, but I actually think a first step is actually ensuring that we are speaking the same language. I think the work of people like BSI in creating vocabulary dictionaries, if you like, is a very good way of going about this, but I do think there is work to do in aligning and speaking a common language on tech, speaking a common language on data, and the industry has a job to do that as well. Sometimes companies don't speak a common language, they struggle to talk to each other, but when we do move towards having that kind of lexicon, if you like, then I think silos will then start to naturally fall away. But for me, that's kind of the first step.
Couldn't agree more with all of that. I think all credit where it's due, by the way, to particularly the Department of Transport, which I'm sure most people in the room know best of those organisations. They have just published a data strategy. They do have a set of people inside that department who are genuinely committed and passionate about this subject. We've got to recognise that silos exist for a reason. Anyone who's worked in an organisation understands that it's just as difficult or impossible to operate with an undifferentiated mass. Silos are always going to exist. One of the opportunities that data, the modern uses of data enable, is precisely to have processes that span silos. And that's something which we didn't have in the old days. In a paper-based world, paper stays within the silo. In a data world, process can span silos. That's an opportunity which I think the public sector is slowly beginning to see. And I would echo Ash's point, which is, I'm sure everyone in the room works with the Department of Transport or local government, because that's the world we're in. 40% of the economy is the public sector. So we all touch the public sector, and again, let's not create artificial silos with an us and them mentality. It's no good pointing fingers, I'm great, but they're rubbish. We have to find ways to help through dialogue each other to do better, taking advantage of the new possibilities that we have.
I think just
Marie.
to touch on that as well, Ashley mentioned it earlier, the DFT have provided us a kind of guidance or a framework on open data, and that's massively helping both SMEs coming into our business, into our industry, but also they have concepts like Rail Data Marketplace where we can go on and exchange data. So they're putting in the framework to allow that to happen, but it's also then incumbent on businesses to use that. And I think working with academia and creating collaboration around data and actually showcasing the art of the possible, what can we do this, and being more visible and transparent as an industry about how we're using that data, what we're doing, because your point earlier, Paul, about people protecting it. You know, we are commercial organisations a lot of the time, so we don't want to give away USP, but quite often those things aren't a USP. And I think it's incumbent on organisations to be more transparent, to be more vocal, and to support government when they do try to change that silo mentality, to really grasp that with both hands. And I certainly see that as part of my role in changing.
Can I just add to that as well? Because I don't think there's one size fits all answer to this. And you know, the very nature of what we do in aviation is it's global, right? So we can come up with what we want with inside of the DFT, but if, you know, Dubai aren't doing it, or other airports around the world, or other, you know, Eurocontrol and the same for the US operators and things aren't all operating the same way, it becomes very difficult. And I think everyone is trying to do that, but it takes a long time and it's slow. Doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. We absolutely need to come up with global standards and global common language around actually what we define things and how we share data and do it. But I think where the real innovation is actually happening is directly between businesses or directly between you know, entities within that ecosystem. So like I say, we collaborate a lot with Ryanair, really looking at what is going to help each of us to be more efficient in what we're doing and how can we do it. But on a global basis, the airports themselves are really driving a lot of this activity forwards. I've got, you know, colleagues at Schiphol or colleagues at Dubai that I work with that we're all having the same problems. I mean, we've just talked about doing basically the same job in rail and aviation, and you know, everyone's trying to solve the same problems. And I think when hungry people get together to go, well, this is a problem here that's hurting all of us, how do we help solve this? You actually provide a lever to actually drive an innovation and a step change. And if you do that with people that are, you know, significant players, you know, Ryanair is a massive player in the European aviation sector. You know, you can do something with those guys, it becomes market changing, and everyone else then stops adapting and leaving it. And I think there's a huge amount of that innovation happening at the moment. You know, as an organisation, you have to be adaptable and say, yeah, actually, I'm absolutely going to go and come in line with common standards. But actually, there's an opportunity for me to go do something different here that's going to allow me to go through it as well. So I'm going to be agile enough that I can say, I'm going to build it this way, but actually I can also point it in a direction that allows me to do it in a standard way as well, that allows us all to move forwards as an industry.
Terrific. Nick, everybody, I've got to say, you've been a fantastic panel this morning. You have. Don't look so surprised. You have been. You've been amazing. And I've got to say, thank you so much for all your questions. They've been coming in thick and fast. I hope I've got to, you know, the majority of them on your behalf. But let's just give a very warm round of applause for our terrific panel. Thank you. I've learned a lot this morning. You've been great. Thank you so much. Thank you.